This is your daily dose of all things royal. Welcome back, my gorgeous, good-looking friends. I must preface that this video contains constitutionally protected speech. Any attempt to suppress and or censor may be found in violation of my First Amendment rights under the U.S. Constitution's Bill of Rights. Section 230 is not applicable if bad faith is exercised under this clause as a result of not liking my opinions. It's my inalienable right to be able to express peacefully. Overall, this video is just my opinion. Please do your own research and come to your own conclusion. So now let's talk about this latest propaganda that Meghan and Harry are pushing out. It has been announced that after Harry visits the UK for the 10th anniversary of the Invictus Games, he will then move on to Nigeria to meet up with Meghan to have discussions surrounding Nigeria being a location for future Invictus Games, as well as meet up with servicemen and partake in a few cultural activities. I hate saying it, but the propaganda that they're putting out is working. They're putting out this propaganda to give off the impression that countries are seeing them still as royals and are being treated as royals because of this His Royal Highness title that the Nigerian Times had put out there. It is giving a false impression as this couple are having their way with the half in, half out. And I'm seeing multiple people talk about it in this light, but they're not connecting the dots. They're so focused on the fact that this couple wants to be seen as this half in, half out, but not connecting the point that Meghan and Harry don't do things just for the sake of doing things. They do things with intent and purpose, and the intent and purpose is never transparent to the public. I was watching this piece on Talk TV this morning, and one of the commentators had said this.
I don't actually think that she's in that sense deluded. I mean, she's extraordinarily shrewd at calculating.
Yes,
I mean,
she
and also, can we just say something else? The amount of money that she has screwed out of allegedly serious business.
You know, if she were
absolutely, I'm allowed to
She's
say
canny.
bugger all. I mean, for absolutely nothing. It is
and it's
staggering.
hundreds.
And he's absolutely right. If you think about it, from the very beginning, she swindled £32 million for this sham of a wedding, only to call it a spectacle afterwards. Meghan falls into the same ilk of the rest of these scam artists who open up these foundations and use it as a vehicle to not only grift off the backs of the taxpayer, but also pretend that they are doing something good to hide up their nefarious behavior. I think that this situation with Nigeria is exactly that. And let me explain to you why. First fact, Meghan is corrupt to the core. You've seen what she's done to her own family, as well as early signs of this corruption was when she lied about being Maltese in order to get a free trip and accommodations to go off to Malta. Meghan took advantage of Elle magazine and came back not delivering what she had promised. It's the same situation we're seeing on this larger scale, not only with Spotify, but with Netflix and anything else that Meghan has promised, like becoming a royal and committing her life to service. I mean, we all see how that turned out. A lot of this nonsense could have been stopped, but we have to blame the journalists who report these lies as well as push the lies and not challenge it. Like, for instance, Meghan calling herself 43% Nigerian out of the blue on her Archetypes podcast. Now, Meghan is a bold-faced liar, and I don't know why journalists do not come out and just say that. Instead, they tiptoe around it, saying that it's her truth or her recollection may vary. No, Meghan is a bold-faced liar. That's what she is. That is a fact. So her saying that she's 43% Nigerian, one, is biologically impossible because Doria is not fresh off the boat from Nigeria. Let's do a little bit of critical thinking here. In any case, none of the journalists pushed back and said that can't be factually true or challenged it. And you have to ask the question, why? Are they that weak or that in the pocket of Meghan and Harry to push out not only disinformation, but malinformation to cause destruction, chaos, and division? This is why Meghan is an agent of chaos. But nobody's talking about that. Why? Why are we continuously giving this woman more and more chances when we know Meghan and Harry are in the business of self-service? And if you notice, the people that surround them and come out in support of them are all part of the same corrupted ilk. Let's keep the facts straight and putting it in front for everyone to remember. All of Meghan's life, up until she entered into the royal family, she never identified or embraced her black self. She never talked about her mother, but talked about her white father. Only when Meghan was able to weaponize, exploit, and profit off of being black is when she decided to go all in. And this is why we're seeing what we're seeing with Nigeria. And you can bet that there is something in it for Meghan and Harry to go to Nigeria, not for Invictus Games, but for something more. So let's talk about Meghan's history and love affair now all of a sudden with Nigeria. If you recall, in 2023, Meghan and Harry laid it on thick with Nigeria at the Invictus Games. I hate the fact that the Nigerians fell for this false adoration Meghan and Harry were showing in front of the cameras for them, because in a few shots that were taken by photographers, you could see that Meghan and Harry were clearly blocking themselves from being confined with these people using their security. This is fact right here. This was all for a show. And again, in 2024, they made it a point to focus on Nigeria in that Good Morning America interview Harry did. The question is why? Why so much attention on Nigeria? If we recall, the first time Meghan ever mentioned Nigeria was back in 2022 in the podcast episode for Archetypes Dated in October of 2022. Now, we all know that this podcast was pushed out a month because of the Queen's passing, so most likely this would have been released in September of 2022, which means it most likely was recorded in August, as we know that Meghan is a last-minute woman. Now, I speculate the reason why Meghan decided to tell this outright lie was because of what was going on at the UN during this time, as well as Harry's engagement with Senator Coons from Delaware. Remember back on July 18, 2022, when Harry spoke at the UN and the story deflected towards him giving a speech to this empty room, as well as the speech that Harry gave in itself was a colossal failure? Well, let's think about that. So much attention had been put onto those topics that people failed to acknowledge that Meghan and Harry didn't just come in to give this speech for Mandela Day. They stayed a few extra days in New York City. Now, why would they stay a few extra days in New York City? Could it be that this couple was really there for this session being held? On that Wednesday, there was high-level dialogue on the sustainable development of Africa, in which you got to think, why did Meghan and Harry bring with them Miranda Barbeau and Genevieve Roth with them if Harry was just going to be giving a speech on that Monday? Now, I have talked about this before. When we look at the agenda for that day, the participation says the high-level dialogue will be a multi-stakeholder event that will engage heads of state and government, ministers, and other high-level officials, and will be open to all stakeholders, including representatives from African, regional, and sub-regional institutions, the UN system, other multilateral partners, representatives from women and youth groups, civil society, the private sector, academia, and the media. This was all about establishing partnerships and having this discussion regarding this Agenda 2063 and the Sustainable Development Goals. Don't you think Archwell wanted to get themselves into this? Well, I would believe that this is why Meghan and Harry went to the UN, not to make Harry look like a fool, but because they were attending this session on Wednesday. It would explain why they had Miranda Barbeau and Genevieve Roth with them. Remember, Miranda Barbeau and Genevieve Roth both had been very instrumental to the Obama administration. Keep in mind, this session was held July 2022. What happens 2 weeks later? Oh, we see Harry in Africa hosting Chris Coons. Chris Coons, the Democrat Delaware senator who also met with President Kagame with Prince Harry to talk about conservation in Africa. Well. And look who has been put in charge of leading Africa's growth and development for the vision of Agenda 2063. Yes, folks, that's Paul Kagame. Now go back a couple weeks prior, the UN just held this high-level discussion surrounding the sustainability and development of Africa. Key regions that were being focused on were Nigeria and the Democratic Republic of Congo. Oh, what a coinky-dink that Harry's got his tentacles in both those regions. According to the UN Executive Board of United Nations Development Program, the report coming from December 2022, Nigeria has the largest economy and is resource intense in the field of oil. I'm sure there's other minerals and resources that equally are being pillaged, but has the largest economy. But from a socioeconomic standpoint, people, at least 40%, are living in poverty. Important facts to know is that on August 8th, 2022, 2 weeks after Harry gives this speech at the UN, the Biden administration issues the U.S. strategy towards sub-Saharan Africa. 10 days later, Harry's in Africa with Delaware Democrat Senator Chris Coons with Paul Kagame discussing, you guessed it, conservation. Billions of dollars have been committed to this strategy for Africa. Come on, folks. Let's put two and two together to understand really why Meghan is so in love with Nigeria right now. In 2023, billions of dollars have been set aside to go towards this region to help with this public-private partnership and following along a line with the UN. When we look at this Agenda 2030, we have 6 years left to go. We look at this Africa region and ask ourselves, are these SDG goals being met? And the answer is no, especially when it comes towards ending poverty as well as hunger. You would think with 6 years left to go, we would have made some kind of progress, but the numbers are showing something completely different in which it's getting worse. Hence the reason why we're seeing this mass migration of people coming out of this region now into the UK. When you read through this US strategy for the sub-Saharan Africa, you see what the real intention is. And this is all about taking advantage of Africa. The money that's being invested is being invested into the so-called conservation. It's going into helping the defense, the military to so-called prevent corruption, which hasn't gone down in years. It's also going into investing into this so-called democracy, aka socialism. But nowhere is it talking about tackling and addressing the forced child labor, as well as the child trafficking that's rampant, as well as the brutality against women. No, we can't talk about those things. Those are the real issues that are going on here. But instead, what we're seeing is this mass amount of corruption that's going on globally, facilitated by the UN. And I find it sick. You mean to tell me, with all the years that they have been investing in these SDG goals to solve world hunger and reduce poverty and eliminate it, we've only gotten worse? And no one in the UN are being held accountable for it because they have this so-called immunity, the same immunity that Meghan and Harry want back so desperately with this IPP status. It has nothing to do with security, because if it did have something to do with security, then Meghan would not be risking her life to go off to one of the most dangerous places in the world, Nigeria. I mean, like, they really think the public is that stupid to see, oh, yeah, Meghan is really embracing her culture. No, this is all a ruse. This is all a deflection. The bigger thing that we have to focus on is the business that they are doing over in that country that they don't want people to know about. Hence the reason why they've been so shady about talking about all these weird things that they have been involved with when it comes to Africa. The stories that we are seeing coming out in the media is such nonsense. You can definitely see the deflection. They want us to look this way, to think that, oh, Meghan and Harry are pretending to be royal and they want their half in, half out. People don't care about that, but we have journalists reporting it. Nobody's talking about the deeper stuff, which is infuriating because there's so much going on here that these journalists could expose, but they choose not to. And the question is, why? Why are investigative journalists not digging more into this stuff? Because this is the stuff that's going to affect all of us. And it has been affecting all of us. Are they in the pocket of these politicians? Most likely. The way I see this whole Nigeria trip, Meghan and Harry are doing exactly what Prince Andrew had been doing as trade envoy. No doubt in my mind, Meghan and Harry are going over there to not really talk about Invictus Game, but to strike other deals. And this is what Hunter Biden had been doing. This is what the Clintons had been doing, all for a little fee that's probably going to be sent to one of those shell corporations into an offshore account. This is what I'm seeing as far as the corruption of Meghan and Harry. Nothing that these two do are done with good intentions. And this whole facade that their propaganda is painting at the moment should not be believed. We really do need to question the motives as to what are they really going to get out of it? Not to help people. This is really all about self-enriching themselves. And we know this. So don't get sucked into this propaganda. And again, folks, these are all my thoughts and opinions as well as conclusions based off of what I've been reading, connecting the dots between the people that Meghan and Harry are aligned with and their behaviors that we see they demonstrate over the last 6 years now. We know that their attempts are not honest and they're not genuine. So, but what do you guys think? Do you see what I'm seeing here? Or do you think that this is all just to pretend that they are royal and to do this for Netflix? There's a lot more to the story, and we shouldn't take their word as being the truth because they have yet to tell the truth. Anyhow, I will be back with more content, but until then, please be safe and I'll talk to you later. Bye.
Such a fraud.